Welcome to the online video panel, To Pay or Not to Pay. I love that. To pay or not to pay, online video. I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm an independent journalist. I will be moderating this session. Thank you for coming. I don't know how many of you actually were in the connected TV session. Can I just see a show of hands? How many connected TV? Oh, there were lots of people. Okay, good. And how many of you, this was a question I just felt we should ask. How many of you people in the audience are independent producers? In other words, people who are actually making stuff. That's quite a few hands. All right. And how many people actually work for, sort of big channels? You're kind of, businessy type people. Okay, good. And how many people think of yourselves as kind of, I don't know, something else? Something else. Well, something else is a pretty big majority in there. Okay. Okay. So this is online video. Online video obviously is on a roll. The Comcast keynote this morning, he actually gave some numbers about online video, which of course I haven't written down on these notes, but it was growing like this. I mean, it was the chart was one of those hockey sticks. So online video is obviously on a big up curve. But is the model paid, or is it free, or is it what a lot of us seem to be talking about now, which is the hybrid model? Is that really the model of the future? We're going to be talking about that. We're going to look at that with the practitioners that we have in the space. We've got a slight different panel than what's in your book, actually, because we had one of our panelists drop out at the last minute. So in fact, we've replaced him with 2 people, so you're getting a bonus here. So I'm going to introduce them, and then we're going to get into it, and we're going to have a little bit of sort of slight kind of presentation, but not too big, and then we'll get into some conversation, and then we'll bring it out to you guys. So just to tell you who we've got, Peter Cowley, who many of you may know, who used to be at Endemol. He's sitting right next to me here. He is now, as of, I think, 2 days ago, yes?
5 days.
5 days ago. Peter is now running a new company called Spirit Digital. And he is basically a producer, a digital content producer. Yes, digital content producer. And he's backed by Content Film, which most of us know here. They own something called Fireworks. So that many of you may know Fireworks. So that's who's backing Peter. Next to Peter, we have Simon Nelson. Simon Nelson has a wonderful title. It's Controller, Portfolio, and Multiplatform. I love that title. For BBC Vision. So Simon's been at the BBC for a while. I think 14 years you've been there. Yes, but he's leaving soon. But he's still got a view on what's going on at the BBC, but at the end of the year, I think he's going to move on to something else. But we're very glad to have Simon here for his perspective. Next to him, we have Larry Tanz. He's the president of VUGURU. VUGURU, some of you may know, it's partly funded by Mr. Eisner, Michael Eisner, through the Torrente company, but it's been spun out now, and this is, their other investor is Rogers Media of Canada, which is a large cable operator and content owner. So that's what Larry is doing. He's the president of VUGURU, and basically they make a lot of content, and he'll talk a little bit about what they're doing in that space. And next to him, where are we now? I've lost my place. We've got Duccio, thank you Duccio Donati, and he is executive vice president of Comcast International Media. Big title. Basically, Duccio's in charge of all the content that Comcast has going out internationally. So this is, the Style Network, the Golf Channel, E, what else? G4, Versus, right. So all those channels, and you also, I think, sell piecemeal content as well, not just the channels. Yeah. So he's basically a content provider internationally. And last but not least, way over on the end there is Michael Comish. He's the CEO of Blinkbox. And Blinkbox, as many of you may know, is it's the largest, actually, independent UK aggregator. So it's an online video aggregator. I think they have 1.5 million uniques a month, so it's growing. And they do both pay and free. So he'll talk a little bit about that, because that's going to be our big topic: is pay or free or hybrid. And one thing I will say about Blinkbox is we've had a lot of online aggregation companies fall over, particularly in the UK. I mean, some of you may remember Juiced, which is no longer around. But Blinkbox is still there, so that's good. So it's always good to be, alive and kicking in the online video space. So Michael, why don't we start with you? Where are we with all this? What's going on in terms of online video, pay, free? Give us a little bit of an overview to get us going.
So why don't I set the scene with the economics of ad-supported. I'll use an example of a theoretical startup. And just give you broad brush costs associated with actually getting video to the consumer. Your annual OPEX is around 5 million sterling. Let's call it euros, let's call it dollars. We're going to do broad brush strokes. And it's going to take you about 20 million to get to break even. Now, assume you want to repay that 20 million. What you need to do is to serve about 60, 65 million streams a month. So television shows effectively with about 12 adverts in it. So what's the so what with it? Just to get to break even, broad brushstrokes on numbers here, you need to get to 62 million. Well, let's take a look at the top 10 video sites in the UK and just have a look at their traffic. So in the UK, what we're seeing is there are only 2 sites who can get to break even on an ad-supported business alone. That's Google and the BBC. The rest of them are not hitting break even. So in order to make advertising work, you have to have colossal scale. It's as simple as that. And across the markets in Europe, you're going to see a very similar situation. In the US, you can probably look at maybe 4 or 5 sites to get to break even, but that's the reality of internet video. So how is that going to get better? Well, we're all looking, in the last session, talked about internet-connected TVs. What you're seeing here is growth in IP video in the next 5 years. So strong growth, but interestingly, the growth is coming on people watching internet video via the TV as opposed to the PC. So how does that help us? It does 2 things. It delivers scale. What we know, and we're out on Samsung, we're out on the PS3, what we know is that people spend more time watching video and they watch more video on a bigger screen. May not sound like genius, but what you're seeing is you reach a larger audience, they spend more time. So it helps you get above that 62 million number. But probably more importantly, it supports pay services. Our buy rates are about 5 times as high when people are watching on the TV as opposed to on the PC. So that really helps. What does that look like? If you think about the UK DVD market, it's about 2.2 billion pounds. If you can we think that's going to be about £1 billion market in 2015. So what you're going to see is about 40% of the physical goods market move online into that space. But you need to create something which is valuable for the consumer. And it's not just about giving them access on the TV. What you're talking about is you buy something once, and you can access it from any device. You can access it from your PCs, you can access it off set-top boxes, off TVs, but what you get as a consumer is instant, ubiquitous access. That's what really drives your pay business. So looking ahead, I think, I'll leave you with 4 thoughts to think about and keep the advert to a minimum because we can talk more about Blinkbox if you're interested. Firstly, this is my 3rd web business. Adam Films first, Channel 4, now this. Mixed models are the way forward except for a very, very small number of people. Unless you can get colossal scale, you cannot make it work on advertising alone. So you're going to have to go to a mixed model. Broadcasters are facing competition on demand, but from an advertising perspective, it's not about a decrease, it's about a migration. So as more people spend more time in the on-demand world, you're going to see advertising migrating across. I think of the pie as increasing as opposed to decreasing. On the content side, content has been and continues to be king. But I don't think it will be king forever. If you look at other platforms, what tends to happen is in the early days, content providers get very large, they get really nice sub fees, but as concentration happens, the balance of power changes. And I think in the next 2 to 5 years, what you're going to see is very strong concentration on the provision side, and you're going to see a shifting in power. So you're going to have a more balanced content versus distribution play. And from the last part for those of you who were here for the last session, right now, there are a ton of standards. I mean, as we go out to multiple devices, we have to create practically a new website for every device, different technologies. Right now, you're going to look at, in the next 2 years, you're going to have 10, 15, 20 different standards. That's all going to come down to 2 or 3 standards in the future. I think in the UK, UView will be a very strong competitor. Google TV, I think, is quite strong, but the plethora of options that you see today will decrease over time.
What's interesting, thank you, that was really interesting. What's interesting about that, in the last session, Leslie McKenzie, who runs Love Film, she was talking about how she's having to port to all these different devices, Samsung, Sony, and she says it costs money. And so you have to make some bets. You really, and she doesn't know. I mean, she's hopefully she's making the right bets, but this is going to be a problem. So this is what you're saying. Not all these guys are going to survive, right? Yeah,
you have to make bets on market share and who you think is going to succeed, but currently, we hold 24 different file types for every single title that we have in order to service our different outputs. And that number is going to grow by 5, 10, maybe 20 times in the next 12 months.
I think we should come back to this content is king, but not forever. But let's hold that thought. I'm going to go to Duccio, and I want you to talk a little bit about the beginning premise that Michael has brought up. This idea is ad-supported dead, basically. In other words, is it got to be a hybrid model? I mean, what do you think as somebody who's in the content game? What do you think?
Look, I think ad-supported is extremely challenging if you're only making content for ad-supported. Ultimately, to make content just for digital and support that just through ad-supported is, I think, next to impossible unless you have a massive breakout hit. And you can't really be chasing hits all the time, particularly on the digital world. I think that the advertising-based model is similar to what we're doing, which is with our e-channel, for example. We monetize our content across multiple windows. So we start with our channel, we then do third-party sales, we then create short-form content because we don't want to cannibalize the other businesses, and we put it on our own website. Sometimes we license it, and we're therefore able to create content once and use it across multiple platforms. So I think that the pay and free model, so that hybrid model is definitely the reality. It's definitely where the future is moving. And I think on the pay side, really, you're going to see the driver content, and glad to go back to the content is king later. I really feel strongly that it is kind of wishful thinking to think that content isn't going to be king in this space for a long time. And you saw even Jim, who was here in the previous panel, he said, without us, it just doesn't exist. And particularly when you try to get audiences to pay for something that they haven't been paying before, that content just has to be there.
Right. Now, was there something you wanted to show? I can't remember. Was there?
I did.
You don't have to. Okay.
I love his presentation.
You liked his presentation. Fine. Okay. Good. Larry, let me come to you. I mean, we're kind of starting the conversation already, but I want to give you a chance to kind of talk from your perspective. I mean, you've just heard what Duccio says. Without us, without the pay guys, this model doesn't work. Now, you're making content as well. What's your view? You're coming from a sort of a digital studio type view, but not all your content's just online. It also goes
that's
on
correct.
TV.
It's a big part of our strategy and our approach is to create content that can actually exist on multiple platforms. And we're approaching the online content space differently than most of the other players out there. For one thing, we're financing all of the projects ourselves. We're not using brands and sponsorships to provide the production funding for us to greenlight a creative product. That enables us to work with better talent and we believe keep the integrity of the product at a much higher level. The second thing we're doing that's a little different is we are financed and set up to really get to scale. So we're going to be doing 10 to 15 of these projects over the next year, which is very different from most of the players in our space who are kind of going from one project to the next to the next. And that enables us to provide a pipeline of product for Rogers. It's the biggest media company in Canada. We did a deal with Content Film, an output deal for a significant number of projects for them to distribute around the world. And then the third piece is the way we approach multi-platform, which is we're really creating, everything we do is scripted. We're really creating a long-form product that is also delivered in chapter form so that we can sell to television and also to online and mobile platforms, essentially the same product but delivered in different ways. And it's very interesting. Fox International is distributing one of our projects, The Booth, worldwide, and they'll roll out the chapters online in some territories. They'll roll it out on TV after the online chapters in some territories, and Rogers rolls out all of our properties on City TV, on Rogers On Demand, on Rogers Mobile, and so it's a good example of multi-platform content which is really optimized for all those different platforms. So we can play in an ad-supported environment, for example, the US online market, and we can play in a pay market, in a TV market, in any territory. In fact, I think we have something to show. Is this the right time to show it?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, if you have something to show.
So here's an example of the type of stuff we're doing. This project's called Pretty Tough. It's a teen drama. It's a 95 or 100-minute feature-length property that we will also deliver all around the world in 18 chapters that are about 5 or 6 minutes apiece. It's a 2-minute trailer.
Could you play his trailer, please?
And cue the trailer.
It's,
I always wanted to say that.
Yeah. It's the VUGURU, okay? We've skipped one, so it's VUGURU, yeah? Yeah, do you have it? Oui? I'm getting the yes sign, okay.
And Content Film is actually here at the market selling and distributing this. Can you start at the beginning? Thank you.
That's, you
There
know.
you go. Thanks.
There we go. Click. Play.
Krista. Meet Krista.
Stay out of my life.
Blonde, beautiful, senior.
So beautiful, Krista.
Meet Charlie.
Do I look like a goalpost?
Surfer, outsider, sophomore.
Why don't you go back to your little surfboards and leave it to the people who actually care? You know what I'd rather do? Play soccer. Oh, that sucks.
These two have nothing in common.
Oh, the girl's making friends with the scholarship kids. It's so after school special.
Except for one thing.
Aren't those jeans supposed to be loose? They are loose.
They're sisters.
Get a life. Get a personality.
So, how did it go today?
They will both do whatever it takes
Oh my god, there was this one girl, she tried to race me on the warm-up run.
to take the other one down.
And she actually shoved me over.
Sounds like she's a little threatened by you.
You think? I can do what you can do, only better. We lost because of you.
Now these sibling rivals
God forbid I get the spotlight for once.
are about to take their battle
I'm talking about soccer, not your stupid teen angst.
to a whole new level.
When are you two gonna wake up? You can learn to get along.
The fact is, we're sisters. That's not going to change. I never wanted to, Charlie.
These were
Okay.
led by the gifted Brown sisters who come out of nowhere, battling it out for the title.
We've been through a lot this season, both on and off the field.
Two sisters,
This could be our last game together.
one dream.
What I'd rather do?
Play soccer.
Right. Okay. Very nice. Looks like television quality stuff. Let me ask you, to get back to our discussion, Duccio, basically his revenue source is obviously sells pay channels, he gets carriage fees, he's got all this stuff going on. Your revenue source is basically Rogers is funding a lot of this stuff.
Well, that's
You've
not a
got-
revenue source.
Well, it's your ignition source, and then you're able to put this stuff out, and you hope that the online advertising will come in, right?
No. It's not post and pray. There's two sources. So we license content to Rogers. They do pay us for that.
Good.
We sell our programming all over the world. For example, The Booth, which is something we announced with Fox International, they pay us for that. And they distribute it all over the world on their television and online channels. And so because we're creating high-def programming, mixed in 5.1 surround, delivered on HD cam, it's broadcast quality, so we're able to get license fees
Okay, so
international.
it's a mixed model, basically.
Exactly, and in the U.S., we're able to launch with advertisers up front with big distributors. So again, it's not post it, see how many views we get, but go out with a Hulu or a MySpace with a big media plan to an advertiser. Just like TV, we know coming in the amount of media and the audience that needs to be delivered against
But you
it.
couldn't survive just in the online space with ad supported. You need
That's
to have
a
a
great
pay
point.
component,
Yeah,
right?
we are doing premium content. It's
Right.
much more expensive
Okay.
than what you see on YouTube and what you see in the infotainment space. So we need this mixed model to make it work. Absolutely.
Okay. Simon, how does content need to be modified to make this business model work? I mean, we've talked about ad-supported. It's not, unless you get to huge scale, these sites aren't going to work. We've talked about, we've got two content providers here saying you've got to have a hybrid model or it won't work. What's your view?
Well, I'm fortunate to come from an organisation that has about the best business model going. Compulsory licence fee on everyone who's got a TV. And I've been in the luxurious position of having a content budget from which I need to generate not a cent of revenue.
And you're leaving this job.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't quite add up,
That's
does
the
it?
business model.
It was too easy, let's say.
Oh, God. Oh, if only life was too easy. Yes, go ahead, Simon, yes.
So let me. So you can all rest assured I won't be as smug as this for much longer. But let's preach from this ivory tower for a few minutes. Even at the BBC, with the power of the BBC brand behind us, with the power of the BBC website, which is one of the most linked to and therefore search efficient sites on the internet, we have struggled to generate big mass audiences for anything that isn't either an existing TV program that we've made available via iPlayer, or that has been tied in some way to a brand and therefore able to take advantage of all the mass marketing that brings. That doesn't mean there isn't a role for and an imperative for the content industry and the distribution industry to crack this area. You know, huge numbers of people are now, day in, day out, utilizing video on these platforms. And I think that where we have had most success is where, for a start, we focused on doing something that is, first and foremost, brilliant content. So it doesn't matter if it's, you know, hooked into your Twitter feed, if you can, you know, plug it through Facebook, if it's got, you know, the chance to choose the ending of the drama or anything like that. If it's a crap story, people are not going to come to it, people are not going to enjoy it, people are not going to recommend it. So many of the things that held most true, hello? Many of the things that held most true in...
Give him that one.
No.
Try that.
How's that one?
That's
that
better.
one sounds like it's working. So the things that held most true for linear live TV, I think, also stretch over to the online world as well. I think that a focus on making the material as accessible and discoverable as possible, on learning the new techniques of search engine optimization, of learning the new marketing skills that, in my experience, very few traditional marketing and advertising agencies have yet cracked, on how to raise awareness and generate the kind of buzz that you need in order to make something a hit. These are the things that traditional broadcasters and new broadcasters are having to learn. And yes, and we'll probably talk about them in a bit, there are all sorts of additional enhancements and ways in which one can sort of sync one's content into the web in order to make it more potent and have more impact. And I think that the key moment that's coming for all of us is the arrival of connected TVs that suddenly place that content and those interactive experiences on a big screen and hopefully really, really simple and intuitive for the user to access.
Good. Peter, now from your view, not from the ivory tower, but somebody who's going to be trying to work in the commercial world, and yet Endemol, you worked at the commercial world. What do you think? We've talked about ad-supported, we've talked about pay, I think we've come to the decision it's got to be hybrid. What's your view as somebody who's going to be producing content, I guess digitally, mostly digital?
Mostly digitally. I think I probably come from the opposite end of where Simon came from. We had to make money at Endemol most of the time, I would probably say. And what I did from the 7.5 years I spent at Endemol, and particularly the last couple of years working more fully creating content, original content in the digital area, I've actually put a couple of slides together to give you my very, very basic sort of, if you're a 5-year-old, hopefully these will make sense. Maybe if you're over 35, they won't. But if I can press the right button in the right order. Here we go. So we talked a lot about aggregators, I think, and we dipped into producers. But I do this very basic value chain of producers, channels, aggregators. And I think the fourth one is the consumer that sort of sits there, because they're the people, whichever way you are on the value chain, they consume this content. They're the audience, they're the subscriber, they're the customer, depending on which phrase you use. And I have a really basic catch-all ABCD of where you make money here. We talked about advertisers to a certain extent today, and through VUGURU we've talked about them doing deals with distributors, broadcasters commissioning stuff, but we sort of haven't really touched on the data and people using data to build communities. We sort of touched on it a bit through YouTube and Facebook, and people using those platforms to acquire a customer base, to sell them stuff. And then we touched on sort of subscriptions and pay-per-view in consumers, but I think it's much broader than that. And I do believe this hybrid model is absolutely fundamental. There are only a few, and I definitely agree that there are only a few people who can survive on the free ad model. The only one I could really think of from the UK that's still in that space was MSN at the moment. I could be wrong, but my research
No, they're
showed-
free. Although I had them on the stage earlier today,
Okay.
and they said that they are now considering pay things, but they don't have it yet.
They don't
You're
have
absolutely
it.
right.
I suspect that's a technology issue as much as anything. Then clearly Michael's talked about the Blinkbox model there. And then the Love Film with the session earlier, I think, is a fantastic model, taking the sort of old world subscriptions through to digital world. And we didn't mention iTunes, which is probably the biggest of them all from the music business, which seems at the moment to be purely pay. But if we sort of touch on some of the new stuff, and VUGURU, I think, have shown that on the premium end of this, that it is about brand funded and distribution. But I've got a couple of great favourites in this area that I thought I'd share with you. And I'll flick through some of these things, which were just going to be some lovely pictures of what I've just talked about. But I'm going to touch on Diagonal View, who take a model which I think is very interesting here, which is they take existing archive content here from the ITN archive, and they repackage it, they re-edit and make it more contemporary for the audience.
Is this an aggregator site?
They are a series of channels
Okay.
that sort of leach, for want of a better word, onto YouTube, MSN, Yahoo, and all the big sort of publisher sites out there. And their big market is probably the US, but they're international in their look. And if you look at some of these numbers, the channel called Diagonal View has had 346 million views. So I know, even if you translate that to $1 a CPM, there's a little bit of money in there. And these guys are small, you know, starting from scratch. And, you know, maybe for you guys to have a closer look at this, but I think they just sell pre-roll advertising around this on through other people's distribution platforms. And they've come up with a new model, which is taking old content and making it more contemporary. My favourite, coming out of YouTube, this is a guy who is really going to get paid by old media, but by being a star in digital media. Again, lots of stats of how well he's done on YouTube, but he's just released a film. And Nickelodeon picked up the film, and it's going to go to DVD. And Fred the movie premiered, for those of you who don't know, Nickelodeon in the US, probably 3 weeks ago, and drew an audience 7.6 million, which goes back to my data.
And tell
business
people
model.
how Fred started. I mean, Fred just started as a kid on the net, right?
Fred, for those of you who I'm shocked if you haven't seen him on the net.
How many people don't know Fred? Okay, see, tell them. See,
my
they
Lord.
don't know Fred, so talk about Fred.
Fred.
Fred's one of these internet phenomena.
Fred.
How old is he, 12 or something?
Well, I'm guessing he's probably now 15.
What are we gonna
or
do?
14, 15.
Amazing.
But he began, I think, as an 11, 12-year-old on YouTube. He has a very high-pitched voice and appeals to a certain target audience.
It's a very annoying voice, by the way.
Sort of if you've ever swallowed helium in a balloon and then spoken afterwards, and then you run around like you've drunk too many very strong kids' drinks, then you're probably halfway to understanding what Fred is.
So his revenue model, as you say, is he started this funny site doing all this weird stuff, but look what the revenue model is. Hey,
Yeah,
he's become a
and,
star, Nick.
He's become a star, but he probably makes, for a 15-year-old, pretty decent pocket money by just being on YouTube. If you look at all those stats of the views he's got, but I think this is quite significant. He's talent. He's been discovered, or he's discovered himself online. He's not your traditional premium Hollywood movie star, although he is probably now just set to be a Hollywood movie star. I think that's a decent audience on Nickelodeon in the US. And for those of you in the UK, it comes next summer to the UK. You'll be very pleased to know. And I'm sure the DVD will do very well. So one, for those of you who haven't seen it, take a look at it. And then I thought I'd end with the sort of VUGURU's summation. Premium quality, opportunities for advertising and distributing partners. That is that classic hybrid model that I think we've talked about.
Yeah.
And that's my quick foray into business models.
So which one are you going to fit into? Are you going to do the Fred model?
Do you know, I'm a man.
Peter on the net?
I'm going to throw everything at the kitchen sink included. That's what I'm going to do. Every single one.
Okay. Okay. All right. So basically what we come to is that you have to come up with a mixed, right? There's got to be some kind of mixed up. You've got to think of that. Let's go back to, I thought this other contentious thing that Michael said right at the top was that the distribution channel could end up being more powerful than the content people. Isn't that what you said, Michael?
Well, no, I think you're going to see a slight shift in power. So let's
Shift in power,
if you
okay.
use the UK example, your sub fees with Sky when they first launched probably look very different from what they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the nature of this business is, technology does not happen very quickly. We tend to slow it down, which means the incumbents have lots of time to react. And what you're going to see is, as we've seen before, at the consumer end, you're going to see concentration of power, right? So whether that's Blockbuster of old, whether that's the cable structure in the US, whatever it is, when you have that distribution of power, you're going to see average ARPU rates come down. Content is key. It's absolutely key. It's key to my business. We distribute for all the majors. It's the lifeblood of what we do. But I think when the distribution side concentrates, as a rights holder, I think that the natural thing happens is there's a slight shift in power. Right now, it's very skewed towards content. All I'm saying is if you look at other, historically, when new technologies have emerged, that tends to move over time.
Mm-hmm. So what does everybody else think about that? I mean, Duccio, what do you think?
Look, of course, generally that's the rule, and I think it's true. I think in this space, it's going to take longer than it has in the past for a few reasons. One is, again, you're trying to get the consumers to adopt a new business model. Although with the kind of traditional DVD model moving online, I think it's going to be easier. I think in terms of barriers to entry, because Netflix was mentioned before, and of course it now looks like a huge success story. But the truth is, once the technology gets easier to adopt, somebody's going to come in and throw a bunch of money to it, and Netflix will have first mover advantage, but they won't necessarily be able to lock somebody else out. So a few big players will emerge, but those players, no matter what, if the pay model is kind of that rental model driven by premium product, it'll continue to be driven by the studios, and the studios will continue to dictate the prices. They'll continue to protect their windowing, as Jim was saying before we were there. So I think it's going to be, I don't think we're going to see that shift happen in the next 2 to 5 years.
But, I mean, Simon, you work for a company that has one of the biggest sites ever. I mean, iPlayer is just huge. I mean, it's just huge. It dominates the scene. Now, obviously, you're not trying to make money on it. It's free and all that kind of stuff. But it has to do with how good it is, right? And that it has good content, but also that it works. I mean, that's the main thing, or not?
No, absolutely. I mean, iPlayer's currently doing about 2.3 million programs watched every day, about 1 million people using it every day. And you're absolutely right. The thing that drives its peaks are, when the big programs are on. The Apprentice started on BBC One last night. No, tonight it starts, actually. And as a result, iPlayer, I predict, will hit its record performance tomorrow. Because a lot of people will forget that it's coming on tonight. They will not be aware that it's on the schedule. And tomorrow people will be talking about it, and they're like, oh, damn, get onto the iPlayer. Let me just put it slightly in perspective, though, those numbers. So even for the BBC, on-demand consumption via the internet is probably around 0.5% to 1% of our overall TV consumption. And it's growing big, but that's still, even if it grows, even if it doubles every year, it's still going to take a little bit of time before it cannibalizes, the core TV business that we've got. And we may come back in a bit to some of the, there's a lot spoken about how the arrival of on-demand, the internet, etc., forecasts the death of TV and channels and brands and the kind of things that audiences hold true to at the moment. I don't buy it. I don't buy it in the next 2 to 5 years. I do think it's important. I do think it's fundamental. But actually, there's going to be an evolution there. I will just say as well on talking about Sky there. Sky have me totally locked in. I keep trying to escape, and I can't. And
Sky's a pay TV operator in the UK.
Sorry. And they're not only now supplying my TV, they're supplying my phone, they're supplying my broadband. I've got a PVR, probably the best in the market provided by them. I've got it in a couple of rooms. I'm their best customer. But the thing that locks me in is actually not the technology, good though it is. I keep thinking, actually, with a variety, with my PlayStation now, with the iPlayer made available through it, with FreeSat available in the UK, and other internet services coming along, actually, I could cut that cord. The reason I can't, and it's a peculiarly English reason, is the cricket. They have me. I am a ridiculously passionate cricket fan, and they have all the rights. Their coverage is outstanding, But in order to be able to access that, I need to get about the premium package, so it just becomes worth getting all the other things. And that's about the highest premium content, but I just don't buy that, the two are going to become separate.
Michael, and then I'm going to bring Larry in.
The cable cutting the cord discussion, I mean, to me, it's great hype, but there's no reality in it. If you look at Blinkbox, if you look at the pay market, what we're doing effectively is we're capturing the DVD as it moves from physical to digital. That's not a cannibalization of the existing cable industry, right? That's a cannibalization of high street retail, which is why you see Blockbuster going out of business. It has nothing to do with cutting the cable. They're two very different offers. So I think that's great hype, but it has nothing to do with reality. And that's the pay side. When we talk about pay, that's the pay business we're talking about. And just to be even more, direct on the advertising side, the advertising side of our business funds our marketing growth. We're a pay business. The economics, as I said to you, are so uninteresting. What it allows us to do is to acquire a very broad customer base and convert them to pay. That's how the economics work for us. The ad-supported side of the business, the economics they're not great, and that's the unique. That's the way the model works. Now, when I set Blinkbox up 4 years ago, you could hardly raise funding on that concept because everyone thought the world was going to be free. Now all of a sudden, people wake up to it.
Yeah, Larry, when you look at this, we've talked about, how the distribution is important and, but the content is important as well. How do you get people to know about stuff? How do you build a community? How do you see that developing when you're looking at your content and you want to make sure that, they see it? How do you do that?
Well, we're a pure play studio, so just like Warner Brothers Television in the U.S., so who sells to NBC and ABC and Fox. So we really rely on our distributors to market and promote the show, and we help them use social media to tie into the narrative, and we provide additional content that kind of gives them the tools to go do that. But at the end of the day, one of the nice things about our US model in particular is we're going out and we're doing these advertiser deals with our distributors. So they know that there's money coming in exchange for delivering a certain audience, and we're working with the large distributors who can promote off their platform and drive this audience. So again, we're the arms dealer. We're not trying to also execute the battle out on the field. We're trying to provide the best weaponry possible for our partners to go do that.
I thought we had the best quote in the last session, but that's really good. We're not an arms dealer.
No, we are the arms dealer.
We are the arms dealer, but we're not executing the battle.
We'll sell to anybody.
Brilliant.
But the connected TV panel, which I thought was incredibly interesting, it got me very excited. One, because you're seeing multiple ways for high quality content to get to the big screen, which we really like. And the other thing is the studio attitude and approach, which is shared by all the major studios, is we are trying to carve up the windows and the rights into as small pieces as possible, and we saw some slides showing that. And so for the Boxies and the Samsungs and all the folks that are trying to bring content through these other channels, it's very confusing, and in some cases it's very limiting. So you can launch a new platform, there's no content because I think the quote was, the rights don't exist for those platforms. So it's a great opportunity for a new company and an upstart studio who has no, look, I'd love to have cash flow coming from a catalog from the 1970s, and we don't, but we have the luxury of not having to protect an existing business. And so we can come out and go to Rogers and say, take all the rights, TV, mobile, streaming, download, take it all. We can go to international buyers and give all rights, and that's very liberating for us. And I do think there's an opportunity to create a new form of product that is creatively very interesting and very good, but is also very open in terms of the rights. And the incumbent studios can't do that, because if they do that, the dam will break and the catalog will kind of be out to the masses. So it's an exciting time. I mean, the way the movie of the week as a format that was created in the 70s rolled on for 30 years, a very powerful format. There's an opportunity to do that in this kind of multi-platform content as well.
Peter, when you hear that, does that ring true to you, or is that, what do you think? I mean, you coming from Endemol before is a big company. They had things to protect. Is it easier to be in the space where you don't have a legacy to protect or a library to protect?
Yes, I think that is true. I think there's the old school of thinking and the new way of thinking, and I think VUGURU definitely got that, but they haven't got that chain around their neck of old models they need to protect. If I was able to predict this content is king issue that we talked about earlier. I think the thing that's coming up on the rails is how you manage these audiences, and we talked a bit about it from social media and stuff like that. That if you look at all the broadcasters in the UK, it's only the BBC with any significant reach online, and I imagine that's probably the case around the world. There are very few broadcasters who have both a big TV audience and their own online audience, and I think that means they either have to partner or go and find the audience. And I think Joanna Shields yesterday was talking.
She's from Facebook.
From Facebook, slightly controversially maybe, that the time is here for sharing of content rather than searching for content, because that plays to the Facebook business model very well against the Google model. But I think both of those, whether it's your linking that we were speaking about, Simon was speaking about earlier, or Joanna sharing of content, I think content producers, aggregators and broadcasters are going to have to understand an audience much better in a highly fragmented world.
Is that something you have to deal with, Duccio?
Look, absolutely. I think what you're hearing here in common is that free has really become a tool to drive audiences to your pay environment, whatever that pay environment is. And even if you look at what iTunes is doing now, that started as pretty much a pure pay model. All of the network shows were available on iTunes for free download, the first episode, right? Because that's a way to kind of hook audiences and bring them in. The bottom line is there is no such thing as free. Somebody always has to pay. And right now, on free, there is just no business model that will sustain a free model of streaming long-form content. If your content originally needs to live in a pay environment, so BBC set aside, for most of us, and for every Fred, there's 5 billion 12-year-olds that are not Fred, so that's not really a business model. So the business model has to be you use free to drive people to your pay model and somehow get paid. And I think that's what Rogers is doing, and I think that's pretty much what everybody here is doing.
Okay. Let's see if there's some questions in the audience. Have we spurred any questions? There's one there, and there's one there. So there's 1, 2. So we can get mics 1 and 2. Yeah? And then if there's another one, I'll take it. But why don't we start with you, sir?
Hi.
Tell us who you are.
Hi, Kevin McClellan from Comcast. Actually, my question is for Larry. Larry, you're talking about the studios being hampered by an old business model, which is partially true, but it's also hampered by the cost of production, right? So from a studio perspective, the cost of production continue to go up significantly year on year, far greater than the revenue model is going up. So what they live on is that long tail, right? So it's that library product that's actually paying for the new product today. How do you start producing content that competes with them? And your stuff looks very high quality. I mean, the trailer that you showed, and give away all rights up front and not depend on revenue later down the line from that. Because once you put it out there for free, it is out there for free. So if you give away the content to Fox International Channels and they decide to give that away for free, how do you then have any long tail on that product?
Okay, that's a good question. What's your long tail?
It's significant up front.
What's your long tail?
It's a great question, but I'll add, we don't give it away to Fox International. They pay a license fee for it. So we do see revenue up front, and then the license fee is for a term, so we do get it back, and we can resell those rights. But I think, I just wanted to hit that point, but a key part of our business and making our business successful is spending significantly less than the studios do to produce content. So Pretty Tough, which you saw, costs under $1 million for a full-length feature film that I would put up against anything you see on TV and a lot of stuff that you see in the theaters today. And how do we do it? Well, we're an independent studio. We don't have the overhead of the big studios. My boss, Michael Eisner, is just truly believes that producing below average cost of the studios, which is something that he's tried to do throughout his career, is a recipe for success. You've got a huge market of talent above and below the line in Hollywood that's just not working because there are fewer movies getting made, fewer scripted television shows getting made, so we have access to people who want to go out and make stuff.
So what's your average cost per hour or half hour?
Well, a 90, 100-minute feature would cost for us $500,000 or $600,000.
Right, and relative to a studio, that's a lot less.
The studio's,
right?
that's the legal bill for a studio.
The legal bill.
That's shot on the Red camera. It's mixed in 5.1. It's shot all over Malibu on location. Green Street Films produced it for us. They produced In the Bedroom and Swim Fan and Uptown Girls. It was directed by Stuart Hendler, who did Sorority Row for Summit. many, many, many times the budget, but what you're seeing is great storytellers and producers want to get into this space, and that is key for us, is to keep our costs low, but also deliver at the high quality.
Okay, so you got the
hit it right on
cost
head.
bit. All right, you're saying that. Now, what about the back end bit? If you've given it all to Rogers or whoever it is, do you get any of these rights back? So you're going to create a library in the end?
Exactly. It's windowed. We do
It's
create
windowed?
a library,
Okay.
absolutely, and we continue to sell. And in fact, we've continued. Prom Queen, which was our first property 3 years ago, we're selling now in second and third windows. So if the content is good, that is our strategy, to build a library and continue to sell through windows. The other interesting thing is when we do deals for distribution, these deals are like 3 years, 5 years. These aren't 10, 15-year deals, which most movie distribution deals are. So the windows are actually a lot shorter, at least for now.
Interesting answer. Okay, great. And lady back there, yes? Just keep talking. It should start working. Can we turn that on, guys? Keep talking.
Yes.
Yeah, there you
Hello.
go.
I'm Karin Durietz from Rabodac Media Lab in Scandinavia, and I have a question for Duccio and Comcast. I was attending this morning events called Media Ecosystem Breakfast, where Sony Pictures presented Ultraviolet, which Comcast is a part of. And I was wondering, you were talking about the new opportunities with carve-out windows and online media. How did that go with Ultraviolet? And Ultraviolet, for you who don't know what it is, it's a content delivery standard. As I understand it, basically enable, when you license something that's ultraviolet, you license it for all available platforms and technologies.
Okay, so that's the question. Can you deal with that? Yep.
All right, so just to be clear, I'm with the Comcast programming group, but so I want to clarify your question. So you're saying, how do I feel about being able to license content, and when you license it, it's available across multiple platforms and technologies. So basically, I can see it on my iPad, on my television, is it the kind of TV everywhere concept?
Yes.
Look, I think the biggest challenges in this space are windowing, right? For all content holders, because you definitely want to make content available across multiple platforms. It's something that again, you want people. I think there was somebody in the panel before. You want people are going to watch their content on the biggest screen available where they are at that moment. So you definitely want to do that, and I feel great about it. The question is, how do you maintain your business model by doing that, right? So the question is not so much is that a good thing? Absolutely. It's how much content can you put up there? What kind of business model are you running? And at what point putting that content out there will cannibalize your business? So while it's fantastic to have that content available everywhere, if I'm retraining my audiences to not tune into my TV channel, where my money is made off advertising and off subscriber fees, and retraining them to come the day after and watch it on demand, and I am not getting credit for that on the advertising side, then that's something that I may not necessarily want to do. I may want to put earlier seasons of my content on in terms of making it available. So it's a question of, is it streaming? Is it on demand? How soon does it go up? And ultimately, what's your business model? Because again, BBC has a very different business model from an E, and E has a very different business model from a premium pay channel like HBO. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, the windows are still important, very, very important. In fact, even more important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More than ever.
More than ever. Is there another question out here that anybody else? Very hard to see. Anybody over here? No? Yes? Come on. No? Nothing at all. Fantastic. Yes, one there. Okay. This man here in the middle is like away from a mic. Yes? She's running. She's running up. There she comes. She gets a prize.
Thank you. My question was just, it seems to be that television is becoming almost like a film business model of financing. You need to package a TV show almost like a film. In the old days, you used to go to a broadcast to get 80-90% of your production financed from there, and that fall away means you've got to look to new, different ways of making finance. Is that what the panel feels?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Peter,
I'll
start.
go. I definitely agree with that. In the old days, you pitched an idea, you made it, delivered a tape, and you moved on to the next project. I think nowadays you have to raise the finance, but I also think you have to get involved in the marketing. the community building and understand how you make these multiple revenue streams off the back end. So if you're a producer, life's just got much more difficult for all those three reasons. And I think that's the same if you're an aggregator or broadcaster, although you had to do that before as well.
Anything to add? Everybody agree? Yes? Okay. I'm going to have to draw a line under this panel because we've gotten up to the lunch hour. Could you please join me in thanking our online video panel?